Welcome back to She Supply Chains. I'm Katie, and today we have our first sponsored episode with Susan Burris, Vice President of Partnerships and Ecosystem Strategy at Limble. Limble is a mobile-first, user-friendly CMMS platform designed to help maintenance and facilities streamline work orders, automate preventative maintenance scheduling, and track your asset performance. To bring this to life, I want you to think about a meeting where maybe it's with operations, maintenance, finance, planning, and we just can't seem to agree on numbers. And when that data is unreliable, this cross-functional trust can break down. In fact, Limble's research shows a staggering 12-fold gap in trust between teams with strong maintenance data and those without it. So how do you turn maintenance from a reactive firefight into a strategic asset? Today, Susan is here to break it down. With 2 decades of ecosystem experience at giants like Stripe and a unique background as a microbiologist, she brings systems thinking and precision to asset management. We're diving into data integrity, cross-functional alignment, and how modern CMMS systems can save companies millions. Let's get into it.
Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So I was telling Susan earlier, Katie and I have a deep love for maintenance and CMMS systems. So we are super excited.
Really excited.
To
Geeking
nerd out on this topic today and to meet Susan and learn a little bit more about you. So we always start off with, Susan, please share with us a little bit about who you are, both personally and professionally.
Will do. Before I jump into that, I just want to thank you both for creating this space for women in this industry. I am a huge, huge advocate for women supporting women. And so this is a fantastic opportunity for me. So I thank you for this.
Thank you.
Like you said, I'm Susan Burris. And if you haven't figured out just a couple words in, I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. Where I live with my amazing wife, Madison, and our 4.5-pound long-haired Chihuahua fur child, Oliver. Okay. And I'm also a proud aunt, very proud aunt to Riley and Asher. Professionally, I made probably what most people would consider a really wild jump. I went from being a microbiologist to technology sales. And I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but it was almost 20 years ago. And I've really never looked back. I spent the majority of that time in manufacturing, distribution, construction, real estate, and specifically around enterprise resource planning and all the modules that kind of complement that system. And I got to spend a little bit of time in the fintech space, which was a great experience. But then in 2023, my dad passed away. And it just made me pause, and it really shook me to my core. And I said, am I really doing what fulfills me in life? And is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? And I looked inside and I was like, it's not. And so, Courtney and Katie, I started Googling, literally Googling great company culture, product market fit, and partnerships, because at that time I had transitioned over to the partnerships role from sales, and Limble pops up and I'm like, what is this Limble? And I click on Limble and it's a maintenance management platform, and it says empowering the unsung heroes was on the homepage. And my dad was a maintenance technician for 30 years at Philip Morris. My mom was a director of transportation at a school system. So it was very serendipitous for me at Limble. I get to serve folks like my dad and my mom every single day. So I'm grateful.
Oh my gosh,
I love that story. And I always tell Katie, and I know, Katie, you felt this too, when we worked in maintenance, and I love that unsung heroes. You never get credit when the plant is running beautifully.
Nope.
And then when it's not, everyone is mad at you. And I just felt like every day I was like, I'm making someone unhappy. Or operations takes credit when it's going well.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, I think that they're the most unappreciated workers sometimes, so definitely.
Okay, so you kind of talked about this. It sounds like you found your intersection with supply chain like a little bit later. Were there any other like building moments to this where you're like, this is it? Although I think your story was so touching around like your reflection, and it was serendipitous. You found a maintenance company. I love it.
Yeah, it was serendipitous. I would say my manufacturing and supply chain journey, started when I was in tech sales with around ERP because it was in manufacturing and distribution. But, really the first time that I got to walk on a manufacturing floor, I was absolutely hooked. I think that there's something extremely incredible about watching something go from a raw material to a finished good. I don't know if it's the precision or like the process or just the sheer scale of it all. And honestly, I mean, with my nerdy science background, I was really already wired to be fascinated how things work.
Yeah.
You add then like customer demand and the sourcing and then logistics and delivery. I think my microbiology brain just lit up in a whole new way. And I realized, okay, I can still solve problems, but really in a different way. And I think that I'm just connected to the industry as a whole, specifically manufacturing and obviously maintenance.
The way you described it, it is true. Every time I walk to still to this day, any manufacturing floor, you come in and you're like, oh, what is happening here? It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable.
And I think
All right.
one thing too, Susan, I thought engineering was hard, but you like took the microbiology path, which is really hard. Then to supply chain.
I know it was an about face. It was absolutely a pivot. I tell people all the time, I like building relationships. And when the bacteria in the microscope started talking back to me, I'm like, it's time to get out of microbiology. I need some human interaction here. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're out and about in North Carolina, you meet somebody new and they ask you what you do. How do you describe what your day looks like?
What my day looks like. So I am in partnerships, and I think it's building relationships, right? I build relationships internally, cross-functionally, and I build relationships externally. And I think that human approach, right? That's what I love, and that's what I do every single day, and I'm very grateful.
Love that. And then what about, could you also describe a little bit about Limble? Like, what does Limble do?
So Limble's the CMMS, and all the acronyms, right, in our industry. So Computerized Maintenance Management System. And our mission, I really like to say our mission, is we empower the humans who keep the world's assets running. And I'm a storyteller, and so I'm going to tell a little bit of a story that explains about Limble. So I want you to picture a 3M plant. Courtney, you know this better than anybody, right? So I read an article recently, and it said that 12 million miles of tape are produced a year out of your Minnesota plant. And so that whole operation depends on that equipment running perfectly. And the moment that roller breaks, production stops. Every minute is costing money. And so traditionally, maintenance teams, they're scrambling, right? They're trying to find information in someone's head that's been there for 30 years, or it's buried in a binder. They're scrambling to find the right part, and Limble fixes that. So we're a mobile-first platform, and we give maintenance teams and facilities teams a place to track all of their assets, to log those repairs, manage their spare parts, but then report on all of that about how efficiently everything is running. And they can pull it all up on their mobile device, even if they're on the plant floor next to the machine, or they're miles into a mine and have no cell service. We really become that single source of truth for the maintenance team and make it easy to share that data for whether it's procurement or leadership or to the right people at the right time.
Amazing. So, Susan, as you think about Limble and the system, so we often hear about integration-led growth. So for our listeners who are navigating, a lot of us, really complex tech stacks, why is it no longer enough for a tool like a CMMS system to sit in a silo? So can you just talk about Limble's ability to talk to ERPs like SAP or Oracle, and how does that change the day-to-day life of a supply chain manager?
Yeah, I really think that the days of things sitting in silos are coming closer to an end. I think especially something as critical as a CMMS. I mean, that's where the maintenance data lives, but then procurement data lives somewhere else. And then if you think about, IoT, OT, they're living on the actual asset, but none of it's connected. And what happens there is, you get double entry, you get delays, miscommunication, but ultimately what happens is downtime. And downtime, as we know, is costly. It's interesting because one of the On the first conversation with, large enterprises, after we identified the pain points, right, and we prove the value of Limble, the next question is almost, well, can you integrate with my ERP? Immediately, they want to know that. And typically what that means is if you think about SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, some of the larger ones, we've built common workflows that are standard across systems like that to connect systems like the maintenance and operations team with the procurement team. And typically it's around purchase order syncs. So Limble is the source of truth for everything, let's say, the technician touches, like the assets, the maintenance history, and the work orders. But then the ERP is the source of truth for parts and purchase order approval, et cetera. And then if you tie that IoT, OT side, and we try to meet customers where they're at in that evolution, but you connect all those things and you start seeing the impact across the business significantly. I think parts get ordered faster, work orders move quicker. And so, I think ROI is hiding in plain sight. You just have to connect those systems together.
So this kind of builds on it, maybe like take it down to the next level for your technician who's trying to run the line. So you mentioned this before, it's like when you're down, like that is just, it's time and money and you're trying to get it back up as fast as possible. How does this mobile approach, like what does it look like and feel like? I know one of the things mentioned on the site was about like the QRO codes for work orders. What does it actually mean when you say like, hey, we're going to empower the people who are on the front lines so they can reduce their mean time to repair? Like, can you walk us through? Breakdown happens, then what?
Yeah, I think this is one of the main reasons that a lot of our customers knock on the Limble door. And I'll give you a real example. So Terra Manufacturing, they actually make vinyl pool liners, and it was 85 degrees here in Asheville today, so it would have been really nice to have a pool. But they came to Limble with 90% downtime. I mean, 90%, if you think about that, I know my eyes got wide too, that's like essentially
wait, did you just say, okay, all right.
Katie calls it my outside face. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I saw the eyes. Yeah. I mean, that's essentially like it's a plant standing still, right? So within the first year of using Limble for asset tracking, work orders, and spare parts, they were able to cut that to 15%, and they saved $100,000. And Katie, it really comes down to that mobile first approach. When a machine goes down, a technician can actually scan a Limble QR code right there on that asset. So they can pull up the maintenance history, they can see where the parts are available, and they can actually spin up a work order as well, all right from their phone. They're standing right there. They don't have to go back to the maintenance office or dig through the binders, no waiting. So when we think about a mean time to repair, every single minute or second really that you shave off of that response time is just revenue back into the business. And you can layer on preventative maintenance and you're catching issues before they actually even become failures, and the whole equation really changes there.
The other thing I really like about mobile first is one of the things we're all trying to do, I think, is modernize our workplaces. And is newer team members are coming in, they're also coming in, I think, with an expectation that like I should just be able to pull out my phone or my tablet. It should be at my fingertips. And I always hark back to the days of like going back to the maintenance shop trying to find like the manual, and in like the back 100 pages there'd be like a troubleshooting table.
Yes.
And they're like the reason codes. Like, Courtney, do you remember these?
I mean, I was still printing out work orders and
Same.
putting them on the
right.
on
And
bench.
that is time that's not value added. But also, I just don't think that's. I think people coming into the workforce today, that is not an expectation, right? Like,
Well,
it
I
should
had a
be maybe at your
question
fingertips.
too, Susan, because I was going to go where you're going, Katie. I do think there is this huge dichotomy between the people coming in who expect that, but then there's a workforce that has been there forever. How have they embraced that? Because this is, for a lot of the younger people, like it's a QR code, like they do that all the time. But for some people, that is a big jump in the maintenance world. And so how culturally are people receiving that? And you kind of got to meet everybody where they are. And like I know that if people are not on board with the technology, they will make sure it does not work or that it's not successful. So how have the companies you worked with, really gone through that journey?
I think it's a great call out because there is a generational divide in our industry right now. And we have to acknowledge that there is a generation that is going to be exiting the businesses very soon, right? They're going to be retiring. And if you don't have something like Limble in place, where does all that legacy knowledge go? And so when we talk about adoption, you're going to have those that are going to say, absolutely not. Like, I'll keep my pen and paper and my printed out work order. And then you've got the generation that was born with an iPad in their hands and can't function without it. And so that's where I think the mobile friendliness of Limble comes into play. I mean, we built this with the technician in mind by spending hours and hours and hours out in the field with the technician. And so when we talk about adaptability and getting, a different maybe generation or someone that just isn't as tech savvy from this generation, adopting it, we normally have the maintenance manager say, hey, listen, just spend 30 minutes with me in Limble. And if I can't make you a believer in 30 minutes, then we'll have another conversation. And most of the time, I mean, it's like, oh, okay, this is easy to use. And that's how we kind of, cross that chasm and that divide and get it adopted.
I like that. Spend 30 minutes with me
I
on
know.
the system. And that's some quick buy-in there.
Yeah.
I know it is.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of storytelling, not that this has happened to me, but I'm on second shift and the motor fails. We go to the shop and there's no spare part. And then everyone is scrambling and we're on eBay trying to order something. So
Yeah.
can you talk to me about how Limble can bridge that gap between, we always run into this maintenance and procurement. We're trying to manage our cost or manage our working capital. But then, if it was up to us, we'd have a spare part for everything. How does Limble bridge that gap between maintenance and procurement? And we all got to manage costs, so we know that there's a cost factor as well.
First of all, I love that you two have like hands-on experience. This is so fun for me.
Not that this has
Oh,
been me
so
before.
much. So geeking out. So, I think really spare parts management is like one of those problems that sounds really unglamorous until you realize how much money is walking out the door because of it. And here's an example that I really love. So just imagine two parts, right? They're sitting right next to each other in the storeroom and they look almost identical. One is a $3 bolt and the other is a $90 part or bolt pre-filled with specialized lubrication oil. I think to the untrained eye or even to an experienced technician that's in a hurry, they can look exactly the same. So without a system tracking what's there, you're either grabbing the wrong part, you're using the expensive one, or you're constantly running out of those critical parts at the possible worst moment. And that kind of invisible cost, it really adds up fast. And that's exactly what Limble solves. So just like we did with QR codes on assets, with every part in your storeroom, we have a Limble QR code or a Limble barcode, lives in Limble. There's no guessing. Technicians can scan it. They can identify, they can log the part every single time. But procurement can actually see what's being used, what needs to be reordered,
Oh, that's cool.
what's sitting on the shelf, right, collecting dust. And integrating with the ERP, obviously, that information is flowing seamlessly back and forth. And we do have a customer by the name of Midwest Materials. They're actually a steel manufacturer, and they came to Limble. Their parts turnaround time was 45 days. And so their store, I love the eyes again, their storeroom was a black hole. Nobody knew what was there. Nobody knew what needed to be reordered. And when something broke, that's when, to your point, that scramble began. And with Limble, they got it down to 9.7 days and they stopped running out of those critical parts. So yeah, I think it's the bridge, I would say, between maintenance and procurement. It's not complicated. It requires them to be looking at the same data.
Yeah, the same information.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it because that is where I feel like you feel the tension. It's like, you don't know what it's like when you go down on second shift and you're trying to tell me I only need one of these and I'm telling you I need 10.
Yes.
But it's like they don't have the data and can't see that.
Right.
Or the way people are checking things out, the way it's showing up in the ERP system, sourcing's like, you bums, what are you doing over there?
Yeah, and like procurement doesn't always want the technicians living in the ERP or anywhere in it, right? And so we just give them a tool to, we give the technicians their own tool.
What I love about this, and we learned this when we were talking to Vina about their system, is it's the simplicity around it. And I do think in technology, to your point, like to get people on board and engaged, solving a problem, making it simple to do that, integrating it. I'm sure there's a lot that goes behind that I'm not talking about, but I do think that's just a great lesson that we have to keep remembering
Hmm.
around the solution doesn't have to be complicated, even if the problem is. So I love that.
I love that you said that because we love to say we make the complex simple.
Well, there you
And
go.
that's Limble. So
All right, so one of the things that Limble also focuses on is called practical AI. And like you hear a ton of buzz about AI is everywhere. But there's still some skepticism about AI, I think sometimes in manufacturing, because it feels more hands-on maybe. So could you kind of pull back the curtain and share with us, like, what does practical AI really look like for a technician on the floor?
I think you're right. There's definitely a lot of noise around AI right now,
Mhm.
and especially in manufacturing. I do think people are skeptical. So our director of product marketing, Amanda Myers, says this, and I love it so much. She said AI should be a tool, not necessarily a feature. And so
Mm.
we feel at AI that AI should be a force multiplier for the technicians. It should be another tool in their tool belt, and it should be working in the background. It should be handling the administrative burden so that a technician can spend more time doing what they do, which is, hands on the equipment. And we like to call it, obviously, this wrench time, right, versus administrative time.
Mhm.
And so every minute that a technician spends on, hard to use systems or going back to do manual administrative work, like going and looking up things in the manual, it's a minute they're not fixing or maintaining an asset. And but here's the thing. So none of the AI is going to work if you don't have good data.
Mm.
And we actually surveyed over 200 manufacturers, and they're in asset intensive organizations. And over 70% of those organizations reported a lack of trust in their own asset data. So
Mm.
data foundation, the capture has to be right. You have to capture the right data. And that's really where our AI features come in. So we talk about practical AI. We have a feature called Limble Asset Snap. So a technician walks around the plant. Maybe they're looking at a new piece of equipment that they've never seen before. They can take a photo of the serial plate, and it pulls the asset name, the manufacturer, the model, the serial number, and it's going to create structured asset records in seconds. And so no manual
Wow.
data entry. Asset onboarding used to take hours. This
Yeah.
actually takes seconds. And then one other example that I love is called our Limble anomaly detection. So if you're thinking about a technician and they're walking around doing their routine inspections, and they enter a reading, for example, like temperature, and that number looks off. Well, Limble's going to flag it instantly, not after the fact. Right there in front of the asset. It can catch a typo as well, out of range numbers. Anything that could really compromise the integrity of that data before it becomes a problem downstream. That's how we define, what practical AI looks like. I think it's really respecting the expertise of the people on the floor and just removing the friction that slows them down. So less administrative work and more wrench time.
That's
That's so
amazing.
cool. So while they're out there and actually
Mhm.
executing like their PM,
Mhm.
it could be temperature, it could be torque, it could be like whatever the measurement is. It'll automatically flag. So you have to go back and like reference if it's in or out of spec. Like it'll tell you right there it's out of spec. That's
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
And then, okay, kind of a follow-up question then too. How is Limble helping then maintenance organizations? Because I think everyone everywhere, especially with all the turnover we've had in the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like there's been drift back to more reactive maintenance.
Mm, mm.
And people, like as I'm talking to peers everywhere, everyone's trying to get back to really getting back to truly predictive and frankly even just preventative maintenance. How is Limble helping shift more of the work that way?
That is a great question. It's super important. I do want listeners to know, though, moving from reactive to predictive maintenance, it's really a journey. It does
Mhm.
not happen overnight.
Yep.
And I think here's the good news, though. You don't have to you don't have to figure it out, all from the start. I think the most important thing that you can do is you can put a system like Limble in place. You can start standardizing your data. Because without clean, consistent, and trustworthy data, I think predictive maintenance is just a buzzword because you can't predict anything from chaos.
So
And
true.
so, yeah, you start with getting out of that reactive mode. Katie, in the benchmark report that we did on the 200 manufacturers and asset intensive organizations that we surveyed, they reported that 56% of their maintenance work was still reactive. And so they're waiting on things to break. So like I said, Limble, get out of reactive. And then we can move to preventive, to your point. So that's really scheduled, proactive care for those assets, and that's before they fail. And this is where another really cool, I get geek out over this too, where Limble AI comes into play. So we have an AI-powered PM builder. And so you can upload a manufacturer's manual, and Limble's going to actually read it and automatically generate the recommendations for preventive maintenance. And that's the schedule for the assets, the tasks, like the frequencies, the best practices. And again, that's built in seconds too, but it's grounded in the manufacturer's actual recommendations instead of, John, who's been here for 20 years,
Yep.
and this is,
Yep.
and there's actual value in that as well. So I think it's on that. So I think then once you have that preventive maintenance program humming along, then you start layering in condition-based maintenance, condition-based monitoring. That's where IoT and OT sensors come in for vibration, temperature, runtime hours. And that's where that real-time data is actually feeding Limble. We can trigger a work order automatically. And then when something looks off, give recommendations before it becomes a failure and before downtime. So that's when you reach what I would consider true predictive maintenance. And like I said, it's achievable, but good data, good processes, and the right system really connecting it all and walking through that journey, which we call maintenance maturity.
I feel like, Katie, we were cheated. We should go back to
I
maintenance now.
know. You have fingertips now.
I'm like, do you know how many PM work instructions we had to go through?
Well, you
like
can always
copy and paste and take photos.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can always find out, if your organizations are using a maintenance management system.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna switch to our kind of fun advice questions, leadership questions.
Okay.
So, Susan, you've led teams through massive acquisitions, high growth phases. What is the one non-negotiable cultural trait that a leadership team needs to undergo a successful digital transformation, specifically in an industry like manufacturing?
That is a loaded question.
It is.
Yeah, so I think if I had to distill it down, for me, the one non-negotiable, it's just be human. I know that sounds super simple, but I think you'd be amazed at how often that really gets skipped in the rush to kind of implement and integrate and execute. And look, here's what I mean by this. You're bringing digital transformation into a very traditional industry like manufacturing. You're not asking people just to learn new software. I think you're asking them to change how they've done their job, and sometimes for decades. And I think that gets really personal. If you lead with technology, I think before you lead with the relationship, because I'm a relationship builder, you've already lost. So I think we just need to listen and learn before we help. I think get to know the people, understand their world, walk the floor, ask the questions, find out what keeps them up at night, or really find out what kept them from getting to their kids' baseball game, because they were fixing an asset that kept failing over and over again. And I really feel like when you're genuine towards people and they just want to be seen and heard, I think that walls come down. I think that resistance that you're going to see a lot is going to soften, and that's where the adoption follows. And I think everything gets a lot easier after that.
I like that.
I like it a lot.
Okay, this one is really kind of asking you a little bit more about your experience moving from a very technical role. I know that the cells started talking back to you at some point. But for our listeners, because some of them are in very technical, maybe even siloed roles, and they want to move into more strategic leadership roles. It could be on the tech side, maybe on the supply chain side. As you look back and reflect, like what is maybe like that first brick that they should lay down as they think about building that career path to moving from, again, very technical, wanting to have a more strategic leadership role?
I love this question. I would have to say, like, my first piece of advice would just be brave. I mean, I was a microbiologist. That was my training. It was my lane, right? And I loved science, but something was missing. I really wasn't fulfilled in the way I knew it could be. And I had a choice. I could either stay comfortable or I could be brave. I don't think the world's going to hand anybody a career pivot. I think you have to go out and get it. It's going to be uncomfortable. Like, people are going to look at you and your resume and say, what in the world is a microbiologist applying for a tech sales role in supply chain? But here's what I know. I think really the skills that make you great in a technical role, that curiosity, that problem solving, attention to detail, and really ability to even understand complex systems and how they work together. That's exactly the skills that make you exceptional in a strategic and a commercial role. So first brick, I would ask for the introduction. I would have the coffee.
All right.
Send that LinkedIn message that you've been sitting on for the last 6 months. I think people are genuinely willing to open a door if you just knock, and then maybe an adjacent brick if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Do something that genuinely excites you. Like, don't just chase a bigger title or a bigger paycheck. I think do something that fuels you every single day, because I think that that's when magical things happen. There's so many problems and so many opportunities, and especially in supply chain and manufacturing, I think this industry needs more diverse perspectives. It needs that science degree, that lab experience, and that unconventional path. I think it's your superpower. So I would just say go for it.
That was so great. And it's funny you said brave. When you first told us about your professional career, I thought, wow, that is really brave. And
Scared to death, Courtney.
I mean, and I think the other thing that should not be lost, and you talked about being a storyteller, I think you do have to connect the dots as you make those transitions. And you can't expect the organization you're going to make that for you. So I think
Good point.
just your ability to articulate, here's how this skill set could be a great, skill set in this new role and what I can bring. So I think that is something that I always say in supply chain. There's like the art of storytelling, I think, is a lost, or I don't know if it's a skill we ever had. We had to obtain.
We didn't lose it. We didn't get it.
We didn't lose it. We didn't have it. And I just believe, I tell my teams all the time, I think Katie and I are both in business facing roles. And I think as we did that, we realized how important it was. Like, we have to translate and we have to be storytellers, because our spreadsheets and facts, that's not, that is not compelling all the time. So I just love your and encouraging everyone to be brave, which is really hard at whatever stage of life.
It's so hard.
And so I just love your story is so inspiring. And Katie and I love hearing the passion people have for what they do. And that comes through so much, Susan. And I love that you Googled your way to Limble. Like, that's just, I'm like, that is amazing.
Yep.
With that criteria.
With the criteria.
And it popped up. I'm like, they did a great job on the search engine optimization enough.
So, oh my gosh, we're like at the end of our time. I don't know. It went by
so fast.
So fast. And Susan, it's such a pleasure. And then Katie, apparently we need to go to Asheville to visit. It's been on my list, unless you've been already.
I have not been. It probably well over, like, my parents are in Southern Virginia, and I think it's probably been 30 years since we so yeah.
You've got to come. You've got to come. It's amazing. I mean, the food here is phenomenal. The hiking, the outdoors.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to come to Asheville, and we will absolutely I would love to get together. That would be fantastic.
So fun.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. It's been so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the space. This is absolutely incredible. And so I'm going to share it with the world.
All right. Good.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, Katie.
It turns out that building trust between departments isn't just about better communication. It's about having data everyone can actually agree on. A huge thank you to Susan Burris for joining us and breaking down how high-discipline teams are using modern CMMS platforms to capture 82% of technician work, smooth out onboarding, and completely eliminate executive guesswork. Susan shared incredible real-life examples, from reducing downtime to empowering frontline techs, really showing how this system creates a foundation of trust that transforms how companies operate. We are so incredibly appreciative of the team at Limble for being our very first episode sponsor for She Supply Chains. Thank you so much for supporting this community. Susan shared some powerful real-life examples of how this system really works, from drastically reducing downtime to truly empowering frontline technicians, which is exactly why Limble is such a game changer. While traditional CMMS implementations can drag on for months, Limble's get your team up and running and seeing measurable value in just weeks. Check out the link in our show notes to learn how Limble can help you start building that cross-functional trust today. And if you're interested in an episode sponsorship, please go to our website at shesupplychains.com.